Colombia, 2023. Part 1. The Crossroads. As twilight descended over Medellin, the city transformed from a bustling hive of daytime activity into a canvas of shadows and silhouettes, painted with the strokes of the setting sun. In the heart of Comuna 13, Alejandro Cortés walked through the streets that had raised him. Streets that whispered stories of resilience and survival through their vibrant graffiti and the worn faces of its residents. Alejandro's life, much like the streets of his neighborhood, was a mosaic of harsh realities and bold dreams. His tall, lean figure, cloaked in a nondescript hoodie and faded jeans, moved with a fluid grace that belied the tumultuous thoughts swirling in his mind. At 22, he was a veteran of street life, with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of much older wisdom, reflecting a soul sculpted by challenges. Tonight, his usual path, which meandered through the labyrinthine alleyways flanked by brightly colored houses and makeshift street stalls, was tinged with a new purpose. Clutched in his hand was a flyer, vibrant and beckoning with its promise of a community project. An art initiative intended to transform an old, abandoned warehouse into a mural that celebrated the community's spirit. As Alejandro approached the designated warehouse, his gaze lifted to the structure standing solemnly against the evening sky. The building was an aging relic, its once robust frame now stooped under the weight of years and neglect. Its walls, a patchwork of peeling paint and exposed bricks, told stories of a forgotten industrial glory, now just a canvas waiting for a new beginning. The air was rich with the aromas of street food. Vendors selling arepas and tinto from carts decorated with flickering fairy lights, their calls mingling with the laughter of children playing soccer in a nearby open space. The scene was a vivid contrast to the quiet solitude Alejandro often felt, even in such a crowded city. Pushing open the creaky metal door of the warehouse, Alejandro stepped into a vast, dimly lit interior. The space was cavernous, with high ceilings supported by beams that reached up into the darkness like the bare bones of a giant creature. The faint light from the doorway spilled into the room, casting long shadows and illuminating patches of the floor strewn with debris and old paint cans. As he walked further in, his eyes adjusted to the dim light, and he began to see the potential of the place. The walls, vast and unadorned, were perfect for the mural. He could already envision vibrant scenes unfolding across them, scenes of daily life in Medellin, of its people, its struggles, and its triumphs. The project, led by local artists and community leaders, was not just about beautification but about healing, a way to reclaim a part of the neighborhood that had been forgotten and left to decay. It was an opportunity for Alejandro, who had always felt a deep connection to his community, to contribute something positive, to use his hands for creation rather than the survival tactics that street life often necessitated. As Alejandro surveyed the space, he felt a surge of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Not the fleeting kind that street hustles brought, but something deeper, more enduring. He imagined the finished mural, a tapestry of color and life that would tell a new story about Comuna 13, a story of transformation and beauty born from adversity. This project could be a turning point for him, a chance to channel his energies into something that didn't just defy his circumstances but transcended them. It was a moment of clarity, standing there in the echoing quiet of the warehouse, where Alejandro decided that this was where he could start changing his narrative from one of mere survival to one of thriving. Filled with a newfound resolve, Alejandro set about preparing for the first day of the project. He knew the work ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to put his mark on those walls, to add his chapter to the ongoing story of his community, to paint his path forward in bold strokes of change and hope. Part 2. A Brush with Destiny. The morning sun was already high in the sky when Alejandro returned to the warehouse, but the light inside was softer, diffused by the dusty windows that lined the upper walls of the building. The interior, once an echoing cavern of abandoned machinery and rusted metal, was now alive with color and activity. The transformation from a space of decay to one of creativity was nothing short of miraculous, and Alejandro couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement as he stepped inside. The warehouse had been completely repurposed for the community art project. Long tables, once laden with dust and debris, were now covered with paints, brushes, rollers, and palettes. Buckets of every imaginable color were stacked neatly against the walls, their lids removed to reveal the vibrant hues within. Volunteers bustled about, organizing supplies, chatting with one another, and getting ready to bring the mural to life. The sound of laughter and conversation filled the air, a stark contrast to the silence that had once dominated the space. It was as if the building itself had come alive, its very walls vibrating with the energy and enthusiasm of the people working within. The once dark corners were now illuminated by strings of lights hanging from the ceiling, casting a warm, welcoming glow over the scene. Alejandro, who had spent so many years feeling like an outsider in his own community, was struck by the sense of belonging that permeated the air. The people around him, artists, neighbors, children, and elders, were united by a common purpose, their differences set aside in favor of a shared vision. This was not just about painting a wall. It was about reclaiming their neighborhood, their history, and their future. Sophia, the project leader and a talented artist in her own right, was in the midst of the activity, her presence magnetic. She moved from group to group, offering guidance, encouragement, and the occasional joke to keep spirits high. Her energy was contagious, and it wasn't long before Alejandro found himself caught up in the excitement as well. Sophia approached Alejandro with a smile, handing him a brush and a tray of paint. "Ready to get started?" she asked, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Alejandro nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "I think so. What do you need me to do?" "We're going to start with the base colors," Sophia explained, gesturing to a section of the wall that had been marked off for Alejandro to work on. "You'll be filling in this area with the background colors. Once that's done, we can start adding the details and the more intricate designs." The area Sophia had assigned to Alejandro was substantial, a large section of the wall that would serve as the backdrop for the mural's central figures. The task was daunting, but Alejandro welcomed the challenge. He dipped his brush into the paint and began to work, his strokes tentative at first but growing more confident with each pass. As he painted, Alejandro's mind began to wander. He thought about his life up to this point, the mistakes he had made, the opportunities he had squandered, the people he had hurt. The weight of those memories had always been heavy, a burden he carried with him everywhere he went. But as he worked, something began to shift inside him. The act of creating, of bringing something beautiful into the world, was like a balm to his wounded soul. With each stroke of the brush, he felt a little bit of that weight lift, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. Hours passed as Alejandro lost himself in the work. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its light streaming through the windows and casting long golden rays across the warehouse floor. The other volunteers around him were equally absorbed in their tasks, their conversations growing quieter as they focused on the mural. The only sounds that remained were the soft swish of brushes on the wall, the occasional scrape of a roller, and the murmur of Sophia's voice as she moved among them, offering advice and praise. The mural itself was beginning to take shape. What had started as a blank, crumbling wall was now a vibrant tapestry of colors, each section telling a different part of the community's story. Alejandro's section depicted the bustling markets of Medellin, where vendors sold their goods under the watchful gaze of the surrounding mountains. He painted rows of stalls overflowing with fresh fruits and vegetables, the air thick with the scent of ripe mangoes and the sound of haggling. In the background, he added the silhouette of the city's iconic cable cars, carrying passengers up the steep hillsides, a symbol of progress and connection. As the hours wore on, Alejandro's strokes became bolder, more assured. He added details, a child reaching for a balloon, an elderly couple sharing a quiet moment on a bench, a street performer juggling in the midst of a crowd. These were the scenes of everyday life in his neighborhood, the moments that often went unnoticed but were the very fabric of their existence. At one point, Sophia came over to check on his progress. She stood beside him, her arms crossed, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You're doing great, Alejandro," she said after a moment. "You've really captured the spirit of the market." Alejandro felt a swell of pride at her words. "Thanks," he replied, glancing over at her. "It's coming along, but there's still so much to do." "There always is," Sophia agreed with a smile. "But that's the beauty of it. We're never really done, are we? There's always more to add, more to improve. It's a process, just like life." Her words resonated with Alejandro in a way he hadn't expected. He realized that this mural, this project, was more than just a chance to contribute to his community. It was an opportunity to rebuild his own life, stroke by stroke, layer by layer. It was a chance to create something meaningful, something that would outlast the mistakes of his past. By late afternoon, the mural had taken on a life of its own. The wall was no longer just a surface to be painted, but a living, breathing entity that told the story of Comuna 13. The volunteers, once strangers, were now collaborators, their efforts woven together in a shared tapestry of color and creativity. As the day drew to a close, the volunteers began to pack up their supplies, their faces tired but content. Alejandro stepped back from the wall, his arms aching from the effort, but his heart light with the satisfaction of a job well done. He looked at the mural, at the vibrant market scene he had brought to life, and felt a deep sense of accomplishment. For the first time in a long while, Alejandro felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. This mural, this community, was a reflection of who he was and who he could be. It was a reminder that even in the darkest corners of life, there was always room for light, for color, for hope. As the warehouse doors were closed for the night, Alejandro lingered for a moment, taking one last look at the mural before turning to leave. The air outside was cool, the streets quiet as the day faded into evening. But inside him, something had ignited, a spark that he knew would continue to burn long after the paint had dried. Alejandro walked home with a sense of purpose, his steps lighter than they had been in years. The streets of Medellin, once a maze of dead ends, now seemed to stretch out before him, full of possibilities. The mural was just the beginning, a first step on a new path. And for the first time in a long time, Alejandro was eager to see where it would lead. Part 3. Colors of Change. Setting: the streets and community center of Comuna 13, 2 weeks later. The sun was setting behind the hills that cradled Medellin, casting long, warm shadows across the neighborhood of Comuna 13. The air was thick with anticipation, and the vibrant energy that had filled the warehouse during the mural project now spilled out into the streets, infusing every corner of the community with a sense of pride and renewal. Tonight was the night when the mural, now complete, would be unveiled to the public, a celebration of not just art, but of a community that had come together to reclaim its story. Alejandro stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of activity, and the mural, which had started as a blank canvas, was now a testament to the resilience and creativity of Comuna 13. The once drab and forgotten warehouse was now a beacon of color, its walls alive with scenes of daily life, history, and hope. The unveiling event was set to take place in the community center, a modest building that had served as the heart of the neighborhood for generations. It was here that meetings were held, children were taught, and meals were shared. Tonight, the center was transformed into a gallery of sorts, where the story of the mural would be told, and the efforts of the volunteers celebrated. The streets leading to the community center were lined with stalls selling handmade crafts, street food, and other goods. The smells of grilled meats, empanadas, and fresh arepas filled the air, mingling with the sound of music that played from speakers set up along the way. Children ran through the crowd, their laughter ringing out as they chased each other, while adults mingled, chatting and admiring the festive atmosphere. Alejandro walked slowly through the crowd, taking it all in. He recognized faces from the mural project, fellow volunteers who had worked alongside him, each contributing their own unique touch to the mural. Some of them greeted him with smiles and nods of recognition, and Alejandro felt a warm sense of belonging that he hadn't experienced in years. This was his community, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was truly a part of it. As he approached the community center, Alejandro noticed Sofia standing near the entrance, talking with a group of local artists. She looked radiant, her face lit up with pride and excitement. When she saw Alejandro, she excused herself from the conversation and walked over to him, her smile widening. "Alejandro, you made it!" she exclaimed, reaching out to give him a quick hug. "Are you ready to see the fruits of our labor?" Alejandro nodded, feeling a swell of pride in his chest. "I am. It's hard to believe it's finally finished." "It's more than just finished," Sophia said, her eyes gleaming. "It's a masterpiece. You should be proud of what you've done, Alejandro. This mural is a gift to the community, and your contribution was invaluable." Her words sent a wave of warmth through Alejandro, and for a moment he struggled to find the right response. Finally, he managed a humble, "Thank you. It means a lot coming from you." Sophia smiled and gestured toward the entrance of the community center. "Come on, let's go inside. The mayor is going to give a speech before we unveil the mural." The interior of the community center was buzzing with activity. The walls were adorned with photographs of the mural's progress, documenting the journey from the first brushstroke to the final touches. Tables were set up along the sides of the room, displaying the artwork and crafts made by local artists, many of whom had also contributed to the mural. Alejandro's eyes were drawn to a series of photographs that captured different stages of the mural's creation. There were images of the volunteers painting, laughing, and working together, close-ups of the intricate details that had been added to the wall, and a few candid shots of Sophia, her face serious with concentration as she directed the project. But what caught Alejandro's attention the most were the photos of his own work, his section of the mural, with its depiction of the bustling market scene, the vendors, the children playing, and the city's iconic cable cars. Seeing it captured in these images, he felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Before Alejandro could dwell too long on his thoughts, the room quieted as the mayor of Medellin took the stage at the front of the room. He was a tall, imposing figure with a presence that commanded attention. His voice was deep and resonant as he began to speak, expressing his gratitude to the volunteers and artists who had made the mural possible. He spoke of the importance of community, of art as a form of expression and resistance, and of the power of collective action to bring about change. As the mayor spoke, Alejandro couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This project, which had started as a simple idea, had grown into something much larger than he could have ever imagined. It had brought together people from all walks of life, united by a common goal, and had resulted in something beautiful, something lasting. When the mayor finished his speech, there was a round of applause, and then Sophia took the stage. She spoke briefly about the mural's creation, thanking everyone involved for their hard work and dedication. Then, with a flourish, she announced that it was time to unveil the mural. The crowd moved outside to the warehouse, where the mural had been covered with a large tarp in preparation for the unveiling. Alejandro stood near the front, his heart pounding with anticipation. The crowd grew quiet as Sophia and the mayor stepped forward, each taking hold of a corner of the tarp. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sophia announced, her voice ringing out clearly in the still night air, "it is with great pride and joy that I present to you the mural of Comuna 13, a testament to our community's strength, resilience, and creativity. This is our story, painted for the world to see." With that, she and the mayor pulled the tarp away, revealing the mural in all its glory. There was a collective gasp from the crowd, followed by a moment of stunned silence. The mural was breathtaking. It stretched across the entire side of the warehouse, a vivid explosion of color and life. The scenes depicted were so detailed, so full of movement and emotion, that it felt as if the figures could step right off the wall and into the real world. Alejandro's eyes were drawn to his own section of the mural, and he felt a rush of pride as he saw how beautifully it had turned out. The market scene was alive with activity, the colors vibrant and true to life. The figures he had painted seemed to move within the space, their gestures and expressions so natural, so real. It was everything he had hoped it would be, and more. As the crowd began to cheer and clap, Alejandro felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. This mural was more than just a piece of art. It was a symbol of everything they had worked for, everything they had achieved together. It was a reflection of the community's spirit, its struggles, its triumphs. And Alejandro had been a part of it. He had helped create something beautiful, something that would stand as a testament to their strength and resilience for years to come. The night turned into a celebration. There was music, dancing, food, and drink. People from all over the neighborhood came to admire the mural, to take pictures, to leave their own mark by signing their names on a small section of the wall set aside for that purpose. Alejandro moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and compliments, feeling more at home, more connected to his community than he ever had before. As the celebration wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Alejandro found himself standing alone in front of the mural, gazing up at it in the moonlight. The night was quiet now, the sounds of the city fading into the background, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the mistakes he had made, the lessons he had learned, the people who had helped him along the way. He thought about the mural, about the stories it told, the lives it depicted. And he thought about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, Alejandro felt a sense of peace. He knew that his journey was far from over, that there would be challenges and obstacles ahead. But he also knew that he had the strength to face them, that he had a community to support him, and that he had the power to create something beautiful, something meaningful with his life. With one last look at the mural, Alejandro turned and walked away, his heart full of hope and determination. The streets of Comuna 13, once a place of darkness and despair, were now filled with light and color, a reflection of the change that had taken place within him. And as he walked, Alejandro knew that this was just the beginning of his journey. A journey of redemption, of growth, of transformation. A journey that would lead him to places he had never imagined, to heights he had never dreamed possible. Part 4. New Beginnings. The mural unveiling had come and gone, but its impact lingered like the fading scent of fresh paint on the walls of the warehouse. In the month that followed, the mural became a focal point for the community, a symbol of pride and resilience. People from other neighborhoods came to see the vibrant artwork that now adorned the once-forgotten warehouse, and the streets of Comuna 13 buzzed with a renewed sense of hope and possibility. For Alejandro, the completion of the mural marked not an end, but a beginning, a new chapter in his life that was just starting to unfold. In the weeks after the mural was completed, Alejandro found himself gravitating towards a small cafe nestled in the heart of Comuna 13. The cafe, with its rustic wooden tables and mismatched chairs, had always been a gathering place for locals, but it had taken on a new significance in the wake of the mural project. It was here that the artists, volunteers, and community members would meet to discuss new ideas, share stories, and plan the next steps for their neighborhood. The cafe's walls were adorned with local art, much of it inspired by the mural, and the air was filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed Colombian coffee. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, impersonal spaces Alejandro had often found himself in before. Here, he felt at home, surrounded by people who shared his passion for creativity and his desire to make a difference. Alejandro often sat at a corner table near the window, a notebook open in front of him as he sketched out ideas and made plans for future projects. The mural had awakened something inside him, a latent talent and a drive that he hadn't known existed. He wanted to do more, to create more, to use his newfound skills to give back to the community that had given him so much. One afternoon, as Alejandro was lost in thought, sketching out a design for a new mural, Sofia walked into the cafe. She spotted Alejandro and made her way over to his table, a smile playing on her lips. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, pulling out a chair before he could answer. "Of course," Alejandro replied, closing his notebook and pushing it aside. "What brings you here today?" Sofia shrugged, her eyes twinkling. "I needed a break, and this place has the best coffee in the neighborhood. Plus, I wanted to check in on you. How have you been?" Alejandro leaned back in his chair, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I've been good. Busy, but in a good way. I've been working on some new ideas for projects, trying to figure out what's next." Sofia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's great to hear. You've got a real talent, Alejandro. I'm glad you're putting it to good use. Have you thought about what you want to do with these new ideas?" Alejandro hesitated for a moment before answering. "I've been thinking about starting my own project, something that involves the community, like the mural did. I want to create more spaces where people can come together, where they can express themselves and share their stories. I've been sketching out some ideas, but I'm not sure where to start." Sofia's smile widened, and she reached across the table to place a hand on Alejandro's arm. "That's a wonderful idea, and you don't have to do it alone. The community is behind you, and I'm here to help in any way I can. We can make this happen together." Encouraged by Sofia's support, Alejandro felt a surge of confidence. He had always been a loner, someone who preferred to work in the shadows, but the mural project had taught him the value of collaboration, of leaning on others and sharing the load. He knew that whatever he did next, it would be a group effort, a continuation of the spirit of community that had been ignited by the mural. As the weeks passed, Alejandro's ideas began to take shape. He envisioned a series of workshops and art classes held at the community center, where people of all ages could come to learn, create, and connect. He wanted to involve local artists and volunteers, to build on the momentum of the mural project and keep the creative energy flowing. The community center, once a place of routine meetings and events, would become a hub of artistic expression and cultural exchange. Alejandro spent countless hours at the cafe and the community center, meeting with potential collaborators, refining his plans, and working out the logistics. The more he worked, the more his vision expanded. He began to dream of a network of art spaces throughout Comuna 13, each one reflecting the unique character of its neighborhood, each one a place where people could come together to create and inspire one another. One evening, as Alejandro sat at his usual table in the cafe, he noticed a familiar figure walk in. It was Diego, one of the local artists who had contributed to the mural. Diego was a tall, lanky man in his early 30s, with a mane of curly hair and a penchant for wearing paint-splattered clothing. He was known for his vibrant, abstract paintings, which often featured bold colors and swirling patterns. Diego spotted Alejandro and made his way over, sliding into the chair opposite him with a grin. "Hey, Alejandro, what's up? I hear you've been working on something big." Alejandro chuckled, shaking his head. "I wouldn't call it big just yet, but I've got some ideas. I want to start a series of workshops at the community center. Maybe even expand it into other parts of the neighborhood. I'm trying to figure out how to make it happen." Diego leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "That sounds awesome. Count me in. I've been wanting to do something like that for a while now. We could teach different techniques, maybe even do some collaborative pieces. It could be huge, man." The enthusiasm in Diego's voice was infectious, and Alejandro felt his own excitement grow. The more they talked, the more they realized the potential of the project. They discussed possible themes for the workshops, ways to involve the community, and ideas for future public art projects that could continue to transform the neighborhood. As the night wore on, other artists and volunteers joined their conversation, each bringing their own ideas and expertise to the table. The cafe, once a quiet refuge, had become a bustling hub of creativity, with voices overlapping as plans were made, sketches were passed around, and new connections were forged. By the time the cafe closed for the night, Alejandro's head was spinning with possibilities. He walked home in the cool night air, his mind racing with ideas for the future. The mural had been just the beginning. There was so much more to do, so much more to create. And for the first time in his life, Alejandro felt like he was on the right path, like he was doing something that truly mattered. In the days that followed, Alejandro and his collaborators worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. The community center was transformed into a vibrant art space, with workshops and classes being held almost daily. The walls, once bare and unremarkable, were now covered with the work of local artists, each piece telling a story of the neighborhood's history, struggles, and triumphs. The workshops were a resounding success. People from all walks of life came to participate. Children eager to learn new skills, teenagers looking for an outlet for their creativity, adults seeking a sense of purpose and connection. The community center buzzed with energy, the sound of laughter, conversation, and the occasional splash of paint filling the air. Alejandro, who had once felt so disconnected from the world around him, now found himself at the center of something truly special. He was no longer just an observer watching life pass him by. He was a creator, a leader, someone who was making a tangible difference in the lives of others. One afternoon, as Alejandro was leading a painting class for a group of children, Sofia walked into the community center. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching as Alejandro guided the children through the process of mixing colors and applying them to the canvas. Her heart swelled with pride as she saw how far he had come, how much he had grown since the mural project had begun. When Alejandro noticed Sofia, he smiled and waved her over. "Hey, Sofia, come join us. We're just getting started on a new piece." Sofia walked over to the group, her eyes shining with admiration. "You've really made this place your own, Alejandro. I'm so proud of you." Alejandro shrugged, a bashful grin on his face. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've been there every step of the way." Sofia placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice gentle but firm.
No, Alejandro.
"You did this. You took the initiative, you made it happen. You're the one who brought this community together." As Alejandro looked around at the smiling faces of the children, at the vibrant artwork that adorned the walls, he realized that Sofia was right. He had done this. He had taken a step into the unknown, and it had led him to a place of purpose and fulfillment. And as he stood there, surrounded by the fruits of his labor, he knew that this was just the beginning. The community center, once a place of routine and repetition, had become a beacon of creativity and hope. It was a place where people could come together to share their stories, to learn from one another, and to build a brighter future. And Alejandro was at the heart of it all, his journey from the shadows to the spotlight complete. But he knew that his work was far from over. There were still more stories to tell, more walls to paint, more lives to touch. And Alejandro was ready for the challenge. He was ready to continue his journey, to keep moving forward, to create something that would last long after the paint had dried. As the sun set over Comuna 13, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Alejandro felt a sense of peace settle over him. He had found his place in the world, and it was right here, in the heart of his community, surrounded by the people he had come to love. And as he looked out at the city he called home, he knew that the future was bright, full of color, and bursting with possibility. Part 5. The Exhibition. 6 months had passed since the mural project at Comuna 13, and the changes in Alejandro's life were as vibrant and transformative as the colors that now adorned the once bleak walls of his neighborhood. The workshops at the community center had flourished, attracting people from all over Medellin who were eager to learn, create, and be a part of something greater than themselves. Alejandro, once a shadow in the crowd, had become a figure of inspiration, his journey from the streets to the canvas a story that resonated with everyone who heard it. The culmination of his efforts was about to be realized in a way he had never imagined. Tonight, Alejandro was standing on the cusp of a new milestone, the opening of his very first solo exhibition at one of Medellin's most respected art galleries. The exhibition, titled Streets to Canvases, The Journey of Alejandro Cortez, was not just a showcase of his artwork, but a celebration of the community that had shaped him and the resilience that had brought him to this point. The gallery itself was a stark contrast to the gritty, chaotic energy of Comuna 13. Located in the more upscale part of the city, it was a sleek, modern space with high ceilings, polished concrete floors, and large windows that allowed the evening light to pour in, casting a soft glow over the artwork displayed within. The walls were a pristine white, serving as the perfect backdrop for the explosion of color and emotion that Alejandro's pieces conveyed. As Alejandro stood at the entrance of the gallery, watching as guests began to arrive, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was a far cry from the world he had known, a world of narrow alleyways, crumbling buildings, and the constant hum of survival. Here, in this polished, elegant space, he felt a little out of place, like an intruder in a world that wasn't quite his. But as he looked around at the faces of the people who had come to support him, many of whom were from his own community, he felt a surge of pride. This was his night, his moment, and he was determined to make the most of it. The gallery was soon filled with a diverse crowd, art enthusiasts, collectors, local artists, and members of the media, all eager to see the work of the young artist who had taken Medellin by storm. But more than that, they were there to witness the story behind the art, a story of redemption, resilience, and the transformative power of community. The exhibition was divided into several sections, each one representing a different chapter of Alejandro's journey. The first section, titled Shadows and Light, featured pieces that reflected his early life, the struggles, the mistakes, the darkness that had once threatened to consume him. The paintings were bold and raw, with dark, heavy strokes that conveyed the weight of his past. But even in these darker works, there was a glimmer of hope, a hint of the light that would eventually guide him out of the shadows. As guests moved through the gallery, they were taken on a visual journey through Alejandro's transformation. The next section, The Turning Point, featured the mural project that had sparked his rebirth. Large, vibrant canvases depicted the scenes from Comuna 13 that had become so familiar to him. The bustling markets, the street performers, the colorful buildings clinging to the hillsides. These pieces were filled with life and movement, capturing the energy and spirit of the community that had embraced him. In the center of this section stood a large, multi-paneled piece that Alejandro had titled The Heart of Comuna 13. It was a recreation of the mural that had started it all, but with added elements that told a deeper story. Each panel was a window into a different aspect of life in the neighborhood, from the struggles of daily survival to the joys of community gatherings, from the pain of loss to the hope of a better future. It was a piece that demanded attention, drawing viewers in with its intricate details and powerful emotions. But the most personal section of the exhibition was the final one, titled New Beginnings. Here, Alejandro had poured his heart into creating pieces that represented his life now. A life filled with purpose, connection, and creativity. The paintings were brighter, more expansive, with bold colors and sweeping strokes that conveyed a sense of freedom and possibility. One piece, titled Roots and Wings, depicted a tree with deep, strong roots anchoring it to the ground, while its branches reached up toward the sky, filled with colorful birds taking flight. It was a metaphor for Alejandro's own journey, grounded in his past, but soaring towards a limitless future. As Alejandro moved through the gallery, talking with guests, answering questions about his work, and sharing the stories behind each piece, he felt a sense of fulfillment that was new to him. This exhibition was more than just a display of his art. It was a culmination of everything he had been through, a testament to the power of resilience and the impact of community. Each painting was a piece of his soul, laid bare for the world to see, and the positive response from those around him was overwhelming. As the night wore on, Alejandro found himself surrounded by the people who had been with him on this journey. Sofia, Diego, and other artists from Comuna 13, as well as members of the community who had participated in the mural project and the workshops at the community center. They had all played a part in his transformation, and tonight they were here to celebrate with him. Sofia, who had been a mentor and friend to Alejandro throughout the mural project, was beaming with pride as she introduced him to some of the gallery's more influential guests. "This is Alejandro Cortez," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "His story is as powerful as his art, and I'm sure you'll see why his work has captured the hearts of so many." The praise and recognition were almost surreal to Alejandro. Just a year ago, he had been drifting through life, unsure of his place in the world. Now, he was standing in a gallery, surrounded by people who appreciated his work, who saw value in what he had created. It was a validation he had never thought possible, and it filled him with a deep sense of gratitude. As the exhibition drew to a close, the gallery director approached Alejandro with a smile. "Alejandro, your work has made a significant impact tonight. I've had several collectors express interest in purchasing your pieces, and we've even had inquiries about future exhibitions. You have a bright future ahead of you." The director's words left Alejandro momentarily speechless. The idea that people would want to buy his art, to hang it in their homes or offices, was something he had never dared to dream of. But now it was a reality, and it was all happening so fast. In the midst of the congratulations and handshakes, Alejandro found a quiet moment to himself. He stepped outside the gallery, into the cool night air, and looked up at the stars. The city lights of Medellin glittered below, a reflection of the stars above, and Alejandro felt a profound sense of peace. He had come so far, but he knew that this was just the beginning of his journey. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in his life, Alejandro felt ready to face whatever came his way. He had found his passion, his purpose, and he was determined to keep pushing forward, to continue creating, to keep telling the stories of his community and his own journey. As he stood there, gazing out at the city that had both challenged and nurtured him, Alejandro knew that he had finally found his place in the world. He had become more than just a survivor of his past. He was an artist, a creator, a beacon of hope for those who needed it most. And with that realization, Alejandro Cortez smiled, ready to embrace the future, one brushstroke at a time. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment below to share your thoughts and experiences. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. And share this video with your friends and family who might need a reminder of the power of faith and perseverance. If this journey of faith resonated with you, hit the like button to show your support. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, God bless you.